Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, September 29th, 2020, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the battleground state of Georgia. So, two new polls were released today, both with the same exact result in the presidential race, Biden plus 3%. This is super significant. Georgia is a state that went to Trump by 5% back in 2016. On the verge of 6%. And if we're talking about Georgia itself, it's traditionally a very Republican state. Let's take a look at the Georgia average on FiveThirtyEight, actually on Real Clear Politics, then we'll move over to FiveThirtyEight. So Real Clear Politics did not include the civics poll that was released today. At the same time, as you can see, in FiveThirtyEight's average, Trump is up 0.2%. On Real Clear Politics, Trump is up 1.2%. This is likely due to the fact that they have left the civics poll absent, which shows Biden ahead by 3%, which obviously would just skew the average in favor of Joe Biden. I wouldn't say skew is the right word for it, but bump it up just a tad bit. We're looking at two new polls that have been taken, and the numbers here actually haven't been too good for Donald Trump. I mean, we see a poll from an A-plus rated pollster from New York Times, Siena College, where it's even. Then other ones where we see different time periods, different groups of voters where Trump is up 2% in one of them, Trump is up 1% in the other, Trump is up 5% in the other. So really, I mean, we're looking at a number of different numbers, that's interesting, that's funny. But looking at the overall average, we can see why, Donald Trump may still have a small lead, but Joe Biden is doing much better than Hillary Clinton. Let's take a look at where it stood just 4 years ago. So Trump is up 1.2% now, but on election day, Trump was up 4.8%, almost spot on. The polls were very close on Real Clear Politics' average versus the final results. So it's possible Donald Trump does win Georgia, but by a narrow amount. But you can see that even in 2008, a year where the Democratic Party did very well, arguably very well nationwide, black turnout was at an all-time high. 2012 was the only year to trounce the record for that. But looking at the numbers, McCain ended up winning the state of Georgia by 5.2%. In 2004, Bush ran up the numbers by double digits. And then if we take a look at the 2012 results, in a year where Obama did fairly well, Romney won the state by 8%. So 2016, Georgia was actually one of the few states that moved to the left compared to the rest of the country. Georgia went to the left, the rest of the country went to the right. And there was a reason for that. When we talk about where Donald Trump is getting his main support in Georgia, we were talking about these traditional Republican voters that have been very solid for Republican nominees in the past. And, when we're talking about Georgia specifically, it probably would have become a Democratic state over time. But Donald Trump was just such a disliked candidate that we've seen a return of Democratic support in the Atlanta suburbs. Maybe not a return, but a newfound support from these Atlanta suburban voters, these white voters in this traditional Republican state. Because we all generally knew how black voters were going to vote in this election and every previous election. And it wasn't due to increased turnout that Hillary Clinton was able to come closer in Georgia. In fact, black turnout nationwide decreased by 7%. So what was it? Well, it was those never Trump Republicans and those moderate voters that typically swung to the right, I guess the right-leaning centrist voters, independent voters, that voted for Hillary Clinton because they did not like Donald Trump as a candidate. We saw the same exact thing happen in Texas and Arizona. Now, in these three states, you cannot deny the fact that there is a demographic shift in favor of the Democratic Party. We are seeing an increased amount of minority voters in Arizona, Texas, and Georgia, which in the next couple of decades will become a majority minority state, which means the overall voting population as well will likely be overtaken from the white voters in these states. But these three states in particular, they're one of the few that moved to the left. The rest of the country moved to the right. And right now, Joe Biden is actually the favorite to win Arizona, not in Texas or Georgia. But I will say that his numbers have increased in Georgia specifically. Let's take a look at this map. So this map actually outlines going all the way back to the beginning of the summer, where you can see Trump was up in the polling average at the beginning of the summer. Sorry, not in the beginning of the summer. Around February, he was up by 0.7%. Let's go to the beginning of the summer. I don't really want to go too far early. You can see Trump was up by 0.9%. You'd expect him to have gained traction over time. Biden did have his high moments. Trump also had his high moments as well in his battleground state. But, realistically, his numbers have only gone down. It's down to 0.2 according to FiveThirtyEight, 0.1 on this map, which is not a good sign whatsoever. We can see how the forecast has changed over time in Georgia. While Trump is still the favorite, don't get me wrong, he is still the favorite to win. This new data has given us a much clearer idea of where the race actually stands, because we can see this little dip might actually be enough to help Joe Biden's numbers. Yeah, 64% to 59% is not exactly that small of a that large of a decrease, but it's a decrease regardless, especially since we're going to be seeing a number of ads being poured into that general area: Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina. The Democratic Party has just gotten a huge sum of money and continuing. Since Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, the Democratic Party has raised over $350 million. That was their fundraising numbers back in July. That was the majority of their fundraising numbers in August. So when we saw the Democratic Party break records in terms of fundraising, it's nowhere comparable to the past couple, or the past week, actually, to be honest with you, past week and a half, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away that Friday night. So when we're looking at Georgia, when we're looking at this entire region, this is an area where Joe Biden is going to be focusing on very heavily. And the numbers speak for themselves. It's always been a close race in Georgia. Like I said, Biden did ride high in Georgia around July. He was also up 10, 11% nationwide at this point, so it made sense. But right now, Biden is only 0.2% behind Trump. And this is honestly a state that the Democratic Party probably wasn't even envisioning going to be, a pure target state. They've been always focusing on the Rust Belt. That's one thing that the Democratic Party has been doing consistently for the past 4 years, making sure the Rust Belt is solidified for this election. They've been focusing on securing Virginia and Colorado, New Mexico, and Nevada for a second time. But one thing that I've seen them, not really focus on too heavily. I think they took the 2018 defeat in Georgia, and yes, they said it is a winnable race, but they didn't really focus on it as much as I thought that they would. Now, Georgia is a target. It was a close race in 2016, but nobody thought that it would come to a point where Trump was only running ahead of Biden by 0.2%. And there's 30 days until the election. That could go one way or another, but Trump is not leading by the same numbers as he was in 2016. He was leading by 4.8%. This is practically a 5-point swing from 2016, a 4-point swing based off the Real Clear Politics average. And, that's significant. It's significant enough to push the state even further left. And not only is the presidential race at jeopardy for the GOP, we actually have the numbers up here, not only on the presidential race, but on the Senate race and the Senate special election race. Georgia is the only state this election cycle with 2 Senate seats up. The Democratic Party didn't really field that good of a candidate in Georgia's Senate special election, I'll tell you that much. But on the Senate regular election, Jon Ossoff is still a pretty strong candidate. It was kind of disappointing for a number of Democrats to not see Stacey Abrams run or any other notable Democratic officials run for the potential Senate seats up, or both of them up. But, Jon Ossoff is still fundraising, at least good for fundraising. And then in the special election, Raphael Warnock was immediately supported by the Democratic Party. But Matt Lieberman was taking a pretty significant portion away, which we now see has changed. So in the Senate race between Jon Ossoff and David Perdue, Jon Ossoff runs ahead of Perdue by 2%. Now there's around, I guess you could say, 2% or 3% undecided voters. Realistically, it's not going to be a state that I think is going to go to the Democrats on the Senate level in either of these Senate elections. The Republican Party is still the favorite to win here, but I will say that the numbers probably are going to be better. This is probably going to be one of the more competitive races for David Perdue. He had a competitive race in 2008, not so much 2014, I believe 2008, if I'm not mistaken, because I was just recently watching 2008 election coverage, but it might not have been David Perdue. It might have been someone else. Probably was someone else, but still, Georgia really hasn't been too keen on electing Democrats in modern political history. Obviously, it's a southern state, so it used to all of the time. But now, it was practically unheard of that this race was going to be competitive. No Democrat in January 2020 was going to tell you that Georgia's Senate seat was going to be super competitive, if not a possible Democrat lead. That would have been insane. It was insane to even think at that point in time, in January 2020, that the Democratic Party was going to be putting funds towards Texas, that South Carolina was going to have a competitive Senate race, that Kansas was going to have a competitive Senate race. So this election definitely has taken a turn, and we're seeing in Georgia, along with a number of states across this country, that they're moving further to the left, because Jon Ossoff has increased his vote share from May 2020. So was David Perdue, but that's possibly due to the fact that they are moving up in terms of their numbers as undecided voters decrease. Biden's at 50%, Trump is at 47%. So even if Trump wins the remaining 3%, he ties with Biden, and all Biden needs is one out of the remaining 3% in these undecided voters. Now for the Senate special election, Raphael Warnock seems to be taking 38% of the vote. I think this is honestly a sigh of relief for the Democratic Party, because there was a point in time, May 2020, where it was possible where Doug Collins, the Republican statewide politician, and Kelly Loeffler, the incumbent appointed Republican senator, were going to be the top 2 candidates. Now, if you don't know how Georgia works, they have a jungle primary. Whoever gets, or if nobody gets 50% of the vote on the regular election, they move off to a runoff. And it doesn't matter your political party. It's just a jungle election for everybody. So Doug Collins and Kelly Loeffler were on track to possibly be the top 2 candidates, which means obviously it would be a safe Republican hold. But then if you're looking at Raphael Warnock and you're looking at Matt Lieberman, they were facing it off. 18% for Raphael Warnock, 14% for Matt Lieberman. It was a pretty close race. But now, after Obama endorsed Raphael Warnock and a number of other notable Democrats, he's up to 38%. Miles ahead of Doug Collins. In fact, Doug Collins' support has decreased as Kelly Loeffler's has increased. And Kelly Loeffler, honestly, she's not a good candidate to run. If she ends up being the Republican nominee, it's possible, even with a Biden victory, that the Democrats might get closer than they would against Doug Collins. Not might, absolutely will. But it's possible, it's likely that Doug Collins and Raphael Warnock will face off against each other. And this is backed up by also the Quinnipiac University poll. We can take a look at the presidential race as well. Biden is up 50 to 47% in the Senate race. We can see, I believe, let's go ahead and see. It's a tie. Democrat John Ossoff at 49% and 48% to Purdue. So Ossoff is ahead by 1%. Very close race, but still a lead regardless. And then looking in the Senate special election, we can see that in terms of the top 3 candidates, Raphael Warnock's at 31%, Kelly Loeffler's at 23%, and Doug Collins is at 22%. So Raphael Warnock has jumped up in terms of his numbers very drastically to a point where now he isn't on track to be possibly the first place candidate, possibly first or second, at least second, which means the Democratic Party has a lot less to worry about for this Senate special election. But realistically, Georgia is probably still going to end up voting for the Republican Party in both Senate levels and also on the presidential level. But the Democratic Party definitely has a better chance than they did in 2016 in Georgia, and a much better chance than they have even when Obama ran in 2012 or 2008. So right now, looking at the numbers, I would say that the Democratic Party should be pretty happy where they stand in Georgia. It's actually supposed to be the closest state out of all of the Trump states that he's expected to win. Georgia, Donald Trump's expected to win the state by 1.4%. Not at all a deafening margin, and nowhere near his 5-point victory 4 years ago. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord link for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2020 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.